Namaste and welcome to another video on Sankhya versus the medieval Vedantic schools like Advaita, Advaita, and Vishishta Advaita. So, if you just search for Sankhya, you will find innumerable instances in the Mahabharata and even in the Bhagavad Gita where the term Sankhya is mentioned. So this is one such shloka. Okay. And you might say that, it's only a change in terminology. So Sankhya only means Advaita, or Sankhya basically means Jnana Yoga. And if you are of that opinion, and if you continue to read the Bhagavad Gita, so you can't just take one shloka and come to a conclusion, come to a decision. So you have to study it in full, right? From the start to finish. So all you have to do is just read it in Sanskrita. That's it. And so there's an article that I have written about this. So in this is revisiting Sankhya Yoga from the Mahabharata. So even before the Bhagavad Gita, there are a lot of instances. Basically, I can't actually furnish all the 1000 or I don't know how many instances where Sankhya and Yoga are mentioned in the Mahabharata. So this is one small shloka in the Vanaparva. This is during the time when Yudhishthira is proceeding to the forest. He has been exiled and he is moving to the forest. So it was during that time. And one scholar, one Brahmin comes and talks to Yudhishthira and says, "We will accompany you," right? So that's what he says. And during the course of it, he first mentions Sankhya Yoga, right? Sankhya Yoga as the prevalent school, or I must say, this is the only school of the Veda. You can't say it was prevalent because this is timeless, isn't it? This is timeless. And so he proceeds to instruct Yudhishthira on Sankhya and Yoga. So the terminology is very important. So Shankaracharya, in fact, all the medieval acharyas, whether it's Madhvacharya or Ramanujacharya, all the acharyas attack Sankhya, right? They're unified in the attack on Sankhya. So Ramanuja says it is Seshwara Sankhya, suggesting that the original Sankhya was Nirishwara. But if you look at Sankhya from the Mahabharata perspective and from the Gita perspective, as we will see, there is nothing Nirishwara about this. So the very concepts of what Ishvara is, what Sat is, what Asat is, what Sadasat is, Sadasat Param, Sadasat. There's so many terms that are in the Mahabharata and that are in the Gita. And these medieval commentators, they actually change the meaning of those words. They superimpose their own meanings, new meanings. That is why the Bhashya literature is so important for the medieval acharyas, the medieval schools, because without the Bhashyas, it's very clear that, from the Gita, from the Mahabharata, and even from the Upanishads, the Aranyakas, the Brahmanas, whatever portions you take, it's very clear if you read it without the commentaries. Your understanding will be very different. Anyway, I don't want to make this video longer. Just wanted to mention that this is from the Vanaparva, and there are a lot of instances like this where the Sankhya and Yoga are mentioned. And let's come to the main Gita verse. Gita shloka. Here, he says, Krishna says, among the Gandharvas, I am Chitra Ratha, and among the Siddhas, Siddhanam Kapilo Muni. Siddhanam Kapilo Muni. So, Kapila, among the perfected, among the Siddhas, who are the Siddhas? They're basically the Sankhyayans. The Sankhyayans go on to become Siddhas, right? So if you don't attain, basically Siddhi is, a lot of bad things, sir. It has been made to, it has been the perception among us today is if you talk about Siddhis, then you're some kind of weird fellow who only wants to talk about Siddhis, who are interested in all the tricks, magic tricks as they call. So the Vedantins, the Sannyasins, the Advaitins or Vishishtadvaitins or whatever ins you are, because you are unable to attain any siddhi in your life. So what you do is you bash siddhis itself, right? You consider attaining siddhis as some kind of crime, as if you're trying to steal something, right? First, you have to attain siddhi first, and then you can bash the siddhis. If you cannot attain the siddhis, then you have no right to talk about siddhis. So siddhi here means complete mastery of self, right? Complete mastery of your senses, your indriyas. So in the complete mastery over indriyas, basically yoga, is siddhi. So, among the Siddhas, Krishna says Kapila. So, Kapila's Sankhya is what is attacked by Shankaracharya, not only Shankaracharya, but all the medieval Vedantins. There are so many denominations, there are so many Kevala, Advaita, that Advaita, this Advaita, this, that. There's so many denominations. I mean, each one of the school each one of the schools, right, bash other schools. You might have, you might be familiar with the Vedantic squabbles, the fights, the attacks, mutual attacks. They attack each other, they bring each other down. And most importantly, they all collectively bring the Sankhya of Kapila down. But here, Krishna himself is saying, I am Kapila among the sages, right? So, what does that mean? Does that mean, so how do you understand this? Does it mean, okay, Kapila was also the founder of Advaita? Is that how you might want to understand this? Was Kapila the founder of all the Vedantic schools? That's wrong, because if we look at the actual siddhanta, if we go into the nitty gritty, you don't even have to go into the hair splitting, right? It's just the siddhanta. If you just glance through, if you do a comparative study sincerely, you will find it. But anyhow, in this article, I have mentioned nirdvandva is one concept. So shitoshna, sukha, dukkha, all the other, dvandvas. So if you go over the dualities, free from dualities, so that is one of the key concepts in yoga, right? It's not just karma yoga. From any point, if you look at it, so that is one key concept that we know from the Gita. It's very famous. But what we may not know is not only Krishna, but Yayati, Pandu. See, Pandu here says the same thing. Tasmadetan maham tyaktva brahmanyadhaya manasam nirdvandvo nirmamo bhutva charishyami mrugais saha. So that's what Pandu says. And again, no, sorry, that is what Yayati says. Forgive me. That is what Yayati says. He will say this, when he gives back his youthfulness to his son and he decides to go to the forest, right? And then Pandu again, when he is going to the forest, he says, "Na shokam, na praharsham, tulyanindatma samstuti, nirashir, nirmamo, hankaro, I guess, nirdvandvo, nishparigraha, nishparigraha." So this is what he says. Basically, nirdvandva. Nirdvandva is the core concept that runs through the entire Mahabharata, right? It's not only in the Gita. So it is very coherent from the start to finish. The Mahabharata is very coherent, right? Um, and what else from here? Okay, okay, yeah. And also, you might say, fine, Nirdvandva is also appropriated for Advaita sannyasis or Advaitins. Even Advaitins says Nirdvandva. Advaitins, Dvaitins, all the other Vedantins, they say we don't have any problem with the Gita. So we accept this. There's no problem. If you say so, then the Shanti Parva, it clearly elaborates. And also, if you look at the Shanti Parva, I mean, I can't really furnish. It runs through pages actually. I can't copy paste all the entire pages of Shanti Parva in an article or a video. So basically, if you go to Shanti Parva, just check your AI or just go into the book if you have the Mahabharata original of Vyasa. Just go to Shanti Parva. Just search for the versions of, just search for the chapters on Sankhya. So both Sankhya and Yoga are elaborated in Shanti Parva by none other than Bhishma, and you will find Yagnavalkya and all the other great sages. They all talk about Sankhya and Yoga, the 24 tattvas. There are three versions, 24, 25, 26, but they're not mutually exclusive, right? So you can clearly make out that this is very different from medieval Vedantic schools. You will have to just go and just check the dialogues, okay? And then, of course, the later Vedantins, they have reduced all this Sankhya and Yoga to Gnana and Karma, something like that. I mean, if you ask 10 Advaitins, like I mentioned in my previous video, you will get 10 different versions. Okay, there's no unition because Advaita itself is not a monolith. So each Advaitin has his own understanding because it's not rooted in Shastra. So the Mahabharata, on the other hand, if you look at the language of the Mahabharata also, you can compare the language of the Bhagavad Gita and the Manusmriti, the words, the sentences, sometimes the entire phrases, you have the same phrases in the Gita and Manusmriti and Mahabharata and even the Upanishads. So you can clearly figure out, because I need a lot of time. I can't cover everything in a single video. I hope you understand. But I'm just touching upon a lot of topics here. So how you can differentiate the medieval literature to the ancient literature. So there's a lot of difference here. And chapter 13 is one of the most important chapters if you study this carefully. Prakritim Purushan Chaiva Kshetram Kshetragnameva cha Etadveditum Ichhami Gnanam Gneyam cha Keshava. So Prakriti Purusha. So this is very important here because what Shankara says in his Bhashya, Brahmasutra Bhashya, is he attacks Sankhya, saying that Sankhyayins say Prakriti is the Karana, the material cause of the world. Okay? And he asks, how can Prakriti, which is unintelligent, which is Jada, right? How can it be the Karana of the Jagat, right? And but here Krishna says something very interesting. I'll just show you the exact shloka. Okay, before we go into that, so Sankhya talks about 24 tattvas, right? And here Krishna is talking about 24 tattvas. The five great elements, the ego, the intellect, the unmanifest, the 11 senses, and five objects of senses. It amounts to 24. Mahabhuta, Ahankara, Buddhi, Avyakta, Indriyani, Dashaikancha, Pancha, Chendriya Gocharaha. So, in this shloka, he doesn't explicitly say that, I'm going to talk about 24 tattvas of Sankhya, but he enumerates all the 24 tattvas in this shloka. Okay. And bear with me, I'm going to. So, this is a clear indication of Sankhya in the Bhagavad Gita, especially when he time and again says Sankhya, Sankhya. He keeps saying Sankhya, he even mentions Kapila. So I don't think you will find a better proof than this name, Yignath. This is another word. So in the Advaita, so we have Sat and Asat, right? Sadasad Vilakshana is called as Maya, Avidya Maya, which is neither Sat and nor Asat. And it's called Anirvachaniya in Advaita. That is, it cannot be called as Sat or Asat. So here you have Sattanna Saduchyate Anadimatparam Brahma Na Sat Na Sadadatyuchyate. So what does that mean here? Right, it is the beginningless Brahma, which is neither existence, that is neither Sat nor Asat. So the way the medieval Vedantins have defined Sat and Asat is very different from how it is defined in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, Asat means all the bhutas, all the living beings, they are called as Asat. And Sat, what is Sat? Sat is Kutastha. Kutastha is Sat. So that is the inner controller is Sat. So this I can, furnish the shlokas again. There's so many chapters that discuss this. But I want to quickly gloss over another shloka. So here Krishna says, Prakriti and Purusha both are anadi, right? Ubhavapi vidyanna vidhi anadi. Okay. Vikaranshcha gunanshchaiva vidhi prakriti sambhavan. So Krishna himself is saying all this vikara, know that it is born through prakriti, right? Or produced by, he has translated it as material energy. So prakriti sambhavan. So this is why you can't rely on translations. This is very poor translation. But as you can see, it's prakriti sambhavan. There's another shloka, I think. Karya karana kartritva hetuhu prakriti ruchyate. So this is exactly the thing that Shankara attacks in his Brahma Sutra Bhashya. He asks, how can prakriti, which is jada vastu, which is unintelligent, right, can be karana? And here Krishna is saying, Karya Karana Kartritve Hetu Prakriti Ruchyate. So, I mean, I don't know. Of course, if you look at the Bhashyas, it won't make any sense. No head or tail. You can go check the Bhashyas of Shankara yourself. In fact, I had written an article comparing the bhashyas of all three major acharyas, medieval Vedantic acharyas. But I'll have to dig that article now. I had published it on my website. I had to take it down, and there were a lot of issues. But anyhow, Purusha Sukha dukkhanam bhoktritve heturuchyate. So Purusha is the bhokta, right? Purusha is the bhokta, and Prakriti Sambhavan, as you saw in the previous verse. So it is Karya Karana Kartritva Hetuhu Prakriti Ruchyate. So, see, I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, but look, you will have to study this in Sanskrit. You will have to give up on these translations and commentaries. Both will lead you to nowhere. Okay. So it's like you're studying the Gita, but still you're not studying the Gita. You're studying something else. You're studying someone's bhashya, just not Gita. You don't need bhashya for this, right? It's not a code. It's not a code that you cannot understand. It's bhasha. It has meaning. It has word and meaning. The eternal connection between the word and meaning is that you don't need another bhashya to understand this. If you say you can't understand this without bhashya, then to understand this bhashya, you will need another bhashya, right? And to understand that bhashya, you will need another bhashya. So it's an infinite regress, right? So you decide what you want to do. So I have only demonstrated from few shlokas here, right? About Sankhya Yoga, and there are a lot of things still that I can discuss. But I think for now, for this video, I think it will give you an idea. So this is one of the shlokas. See, there's so many. Mahabharata is such a huge source. I mean, it's impossible. I mean, you really need to take up a project. You need to have a dedicated job for that. You need to be on that job. You need to study each and every line, and you have to compare it. This is just for your understanding. If you personally go and read it, you will find Sankhya in the beginning of the Bharata. Right in the middle in the Bhagavad Gita, you will find Sankhya Yoga. And in Shanti Parva also, you will find Sankhya Yoga. It is very coherent. It is very, what do you call? There is no contradiction within the Mahabharata. Of course, there are a lot of interpolations where I think the interpolation, some parts in the latter parts of Mahabharata is heavily interpolated. For example, the vyuhas are basically mentioned in the Vishishtadvaita. Aniruddha, Pradyumna, so many things come up, and that's mentioned in a small portion in the Mahabharata, and there are other interpolations also, but you will have to know how to differentiate interpolations and what is the original. So there's a methodology for it. So, but who cares? Nobody cares. Everybody is concerned with blah 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 blah. My thing, mine is greater. Yours is smaller. So that kind of sorry, forgive me. So right, so that sort of squabbles won't help us getting anywhere. So that's my argument. So my argument is Mahabharata is consistent, Bhagavad Gita is consistent with Sankhya Yoga. So what is the answer to that? Shankaracharya is alleging that Prakriti is Jadavastu, and how can Prakriti be in the process of creation or be the material cause? The answer is again found in the Gita itself, here in the shloka. Maya dhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena kaunteya jagad viparivartate. So I think this one single shloka gives us a clear answer that Prakriti is under the complete subjugation of Purusha. Right? So Prakriti is not independent of Purusha. So this is one of the differences from Sankhya Karika of Ishvara Krishna and Sankhya of the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata. For the allegation that Prakriti and Purusha are two independent entities, Anadi, yes, but independent, no. Prakriti is completely dependent on Purusha. And there's another thing that I want to mention about Sat and Asat. I did mention that Sat is understood differently in the Gita, Asat is understood differently in the Gita. Basically, I'll give you an example. In the Advaita tradition, Asat is understood as Atyanta Asat. So in the Bhagavad Gita, I can bring up these shlokas. Now I will have to check because it'll make the video longer. So, but in another video, I'll just cover this topic entirely. But I'm just saying here for your reference that Asat in Advaita is Atyanta Asat, as in the hare's horn, a rabbit's horn, right? Or a barren woman's son. Okay. So these are the examples given. So this is a mishmash. Basically, all these later, medieval schools are a mishmash of a lot of other. You can find Nagarjuna's Buddhism. When scholars used to say that, I used to get really angry. I mean, how can you combine Buddhism and Advaita in spite of repeatedly saying that Advaita is not the same as Buddhism? But that's what I call philosophical jingoism. Without studying, without understanding, without going into the depths, that's the conclusion that we arrive at. But if you actually go look at the examples, for example, the example of mistaking a rope for a snake, right? That example is given by Nagarjuna, but under a different context. He gives that example to demonstrate that pratyaksha cannot be a pramana, because pratyaksha depends on a lot of things, and it'll result in error, right? So that's what he wants to drive home. That's the point he wants to drive home. And Shankara uses that same example. And then there is Samvritti Satya and Paramartha Satya in Nagarjuna's Madhyamika Karika has mentioned. But again, it's a larger topic. But what I want to say is this Atyanta Asat can never be found in Bhagavad Gita. Show me one instance in the Bhagavad Gita where you find an example of Atyanta Asat. So this is how you completely change the definitions, the foundations. So thank you. So if you're interested in subscribing to the newsletter, so I'll be publishing more about this. Some of the content can be made into videos, but some of the content are best suited for reading, publishing. So if you're interested in subscribing to the newsletter, please send me an email to the email address that you see here, or you can use the link in the description below and enter your email address. So I will subscribe you automatically to the weekly newsletter. And if you like to support this project, you can also do that. So this project will be reconstructing Samkhya-Yoga from the Mahabharata and all the other authentic ancient sources. So if you want to support this particular project, your support is welcome. And I will see you again. Thanks. Bye.